The Secret of the Abandoned Station, Episode 3. James stepped cautiously into the glowing chamber, his lantern held high as the door behind him slowly closed with a heavy thud. The air was dense, filled with the scent of ancient stone and the faint aroma of burning incense. The walls were lined with relics, statues of unknown figures, old scrolls resting in cracked stone alcoves, and glowing symbols that pulsed with an eerie blue light. The room was vast, larger than he had imagined, and at the center stood a large circular altar, surrounded by ancient runes etched into the floor. As James approached the altar, he felt a strange pull, as if the symbols were drawing him in. The whispers, which had faded when he entered the chamber, began again, echoing off the walls. "You've come far, traveler, but some doors should remain shut." James tightened his grip on the lantern, his eyes darting around the room. The shadows moved as if they had a life of their own, curling and shifting in the corners. His heart pounded, but the curiosity that had driven him this far urged him to continue. He stepped closer to the altar, noticing a large, weathered book resting in the center. The book was bound in dark leather, its cover adorned with the same glowing symbols that decorated the chamber. The pages seemed to ripple as if alive, and a faint mist rose from its surface. James reached out, hesitating for a moment before his fingers brushed the cold leather. The whispers grew louder and the room seemed to tremble. "This knowledge is forbidden. Those who seek it pay the price." Ignoring the warning, James opened the book. The pages glowed as symbols rearranged themselves, forming words in a language he had never seen before. Yet, as he stared, the words seemed to shift, becoming clearer. He could read them. Project Grey Hollow, the experiment to unveil the veil. James felt a chill run down his spine. This place, this abandoned station, was not merely a forgotten relic, it was the site of an experiment. The words on the page spoke of ancient powers, harnessed through the manipulation of time and space. The station had been constructed as a gateway, a bridge between worlds. He turned the pages, each one revealing more of the sinister plot. There were diagrams of the station, blueprints detailing hidden rooms and tunnels that stretched far beyond the platform he had seen. There were accounts of those who had been part of the project, scientists, engineers, and test subjects. The more he read, the more he realized that many had vanished, their fates unknown. The room grew colder, and James noticed his breath turning into mist. The shadows along the walls began to lengthen, creeping toward him. He tried to turn another page, but the book resisted, its pages sticking as if glued together. The whispers grew louder, turning into a chorus of voices, some pleading, others warning, and a few laughing. Suddenly, the symbols on the altar flared to life, and the room was filled with a blinding blue light. James stumbled back, shielding his eyes. The ground beneath him trembled, and the air felt charged like the moments before a storm. The light coalesced above the altar, forming a swirling vortex. As James watched, figures began to emerge from the light, translucent, ghostly forms dressed in old-fashioned clothing. They walked in a slow, unsteady procession, their eyes vacant as if trapped in a loop. James's heart raced. These were the test subjects, the people who had vanished. One of the figures stopped and turned toward him. It was a young woman, her eyes glowing with the same blue light that filled the chamber. She reached out, her voice soft but urgent. "You must close the gate. If it remains open, they will come, and you will join us." James felt a wave of fear, but he nodded. "How do I close it?" he asked, his voice trembling. The woman pointed to the altar, where the book still lay open, its pages flipping wildly in the wind that now swirled through the room. "The key is within. But beware, it demands a sacrifice." James hesitated, glancing at the book. The light from the vortex flickered, and the shadows around him grew darker, forming tendrils that reached for him. The voices echoed louder, a cacophony of fear, anger, and desperation. He knew he had no choice. If he didn't act, he would be trapped in this place forever. He rushed to the altar, his fingers trembling as he gripped the book. The symbols glowed brighter, and the pages burned under his touch. The words shifted, and he read the incantation aloud, his voice echoing through the chamber. "By the gate and by the light, seal the path and end the night." The room shook violently, and the vortex above the altar pulsed, its light growing dimmer. The ghostly figures cried out, their forms distorting as the portal began to close. James felt the ground beneath him split, and he grabbed the edge of the altar to steady himself. But as the vortex shrank, one of the shadowy tendrils lashed out, wrapping around his leg. James screamed, struggling to break free, but its grip was cold and unyielding. The ghostly woman's voice pierced through the chaos. "You must choose, close the gate or save yourself." He knew there was no time. With one last effort, he forced himself to continue the incantation, his voice rising above the noise. The tendril tightened, pulling him closer to the vortex, but he held firm, clutching the book as the final words left his lips. The vortex collapsed in on itself, and the tendril released him, retreating into the shadows. The room fell silent, and the blue light faded, leaving only the dim glow of his lantern. James collapsed to the floor, breathing heavily, his heart pounding. The chamber was still, the air no longer charged with energy. The figures had vanished, and the altar stood empty, the book gone. James looked around, his eyes scanning the relics and symbols. The whispers had stopped, and for the first time since he had entered the station, he felt a sense of calm. He knew he had stopped whatever force had been unleashed, but he also knew the truth of what this place was. Grey Hollow Station was a gateway, a threshold between worlds. And while he had sealed it for now, he realized that secrets this powerful had a way of returning. As he stood, the door behind him slowly creaked open. James took a deep breath and walked toward the exit, his lantern lighting the path. He knew this journey was far from over. 3.